Okay, we're back for another episode of Connect the Dots. Today we are going to talk about the connection between opiates, football, 9/11, the Afghanistan, and the US dollar. My name is Joe McHugh. I'm your independent candidate for the United States of America. I'm a Marine Corps veteran with a background in political economics, and let's jump right into it. So the did Sports Illustrated did a take on Sports Illustrated did an article on Calvin Johnson, and in this expose, Calvin Johnson revealed that the opiates were widely and readily available in the locker rooms of the NFL, and that many players use the painkillers frequently to deal with the pain after each game, and often that results in drug addiction. And as we know, opiates, we have a nationwide opiate abuse problem in this country. Now, Calvin, he didn't like the way he felt using opiates, and so he chose to use cannabis after the games. And another great receiver that's still playing today, very similar to my favorite receiver, Calvin Johnson's skill set, is Josh Gordon. And Josh Gordon's career has been interrupted considerably because of his cannabis use for whatever reason, and then had to not just started with cannabis use, and then he eventually went to opiate use in order to get off the cannabis, and then it led to other types of drug addictions. And so, anyway, the NFL makes cannabis. The NFL has a policy of outlawing cannabis, and yet makes opiates readily available for painkilling opiates readily available. I need a script. It was better before. I was able to talk about it before. Okay. Hi, this is Joe McHugh, and today we're going to talk about connecting the dots between the NFL, football, opiate use, cannabis, 9/11, Afghanistan, and the US dollar. I'm your independent candidate for President of the United States, and I have a Marine Corps veteran with a background in entrepreneurship and political economics. So, what do they have in common? What does football, opiates, the 9/11, Afghanistan, and the dollar have in common? Well, we're about to find out. The NFL has a policy of prohibition, a prohibition policy on cannabis, and yet they make opiates widely available for painkilling in the locker room. And specifically, Oxycontin and Vicodin is readily available in locker rooms, and players have been known to develop abuse and addiction problems as a result of it. So that made me want to dig into a little bit more about what is, and explain what is an opiate or an opioid. Specifically, an opioid is, we're looking at Vicodin, we're looking at Oxycontin, we're looking at Percocet, and you may have heard of fentanyl as well. People are dying from this stuff. Opiate, opioid, narcotic, it's all in the same family. And overwhelmingly, according to this report by The Economist magazine, overwhelmingly, it comes from Afghanistan. Now, the UN estimates that the annual opiate production, almost all of which is from Afghanistan, jumped to about 8,900 tons in 2007, having been flat at around 4,500 tons over the previous decade. Now, why is this important? Well, this is important because growing up in Detroit, we had a crack epidemic. Heroin was not on the streets because it was too expensive. And you can see that in this chart again, is the United Nations on Drugs and Crime. That's the source. Now, if we know that most of the opiates come from Afghanistan, looking back to 1990, which was the end of the 80s, you saw that the price of heroin was going up. And the wholesale, now this is the retail price, the wholesale price was high. And it wasn't until the early 90s, let's say 92, when the prices started coming down. Now, we know that the United States did not invade Afghanistan until 2003. So what happened in 1992? Well, that's what I was really curious to figure out, because that's when the prices started to slide. both on the retail basis as well as a little bit later on a wholesale basis. So, if we dig into this, what we find is that there was an Afghan civil war between 1992 and 96. And prior to that civil war, the Republic of Afghanistan, they had a policy, evidently, according to what the chart says, the policy was to not allow the growth of or the production of opium. And evidently, after the Civil War started, that's when opium production increased because that's when the prices came down. Prices came down. So when supply goes up, price tends to come down. Demand tends to go up with lower price. Okay, so this is how economics works. It's real simple. It's like a lever. All right. Now, what happened after 1996? Well, in 1996, you had the Taliban. Taliban ended up winning the civil war in 1996, and then they had a number of abuses, civil rights abuses, which the United States later used as a pretense to invade Afghanistan to protect the people there. So in 1996, the wholesale price was still there. So while the retail prices were coming down, more of the opium was leaving Afghanistan for export. Okay, but it wasn't necessarily resulting in more production domestically within Afghanistan until 1996 and 97, the end of the Civil War, the installation of the Taliban. With the Taliban, you ended up having a lower, a further decrease in the price over time from 1997 all the way until the invasion in 2003. And at that point, the retail price came down, but look at the wholesale production price at that point leveled out. So rather than having a destabilizing effect, the United States military actually had a stabilizing effect on the wholesale price of opium. Isn't that interesting? So all this stuff ties together. Everything can be found in economics. All right. So now it said, all right, so now that we understand that, who benefits here, I would say that the benefit is probably going to the drug companies that have been selling all the drugs. It's certainly not the American people or anyone else around the world. All right. So I said, okay, well, what does this have to do with what's the connection to? By the way, that's your connection to 9/11. That's one of the connections to 9/11. I mean, a lot of people say, well, what if 9/11 was an inside job? Why? Why would it be an inside job? Well, the first smoking gun is what Don Rumsfeld said, in which he said that you go to the war with the military that you have, not the military that you want. The military that you have at the time was a Vietnam era military that needed to be upgraded. The military that we wanted was a military that was updated to the most recent technology, which allowed us to have more power, more force with smaller units. And that's what we accomplished after we went. You might recall the big the news at the time that related to that quote was that American troops were getting blown up in Humvees that didn't have proper armor. And after that, there was an uprising. American people demanded that we properly outfit the military, which is the right thing to do. But I just want to point out how he came about doing that. Now, the other thing is, other people stand to benefit. You can't go to war without having a way to make money off of it, apparently, in the way our system is today. And it's the drug companies that were making money. And so as you can see right here, bringing down the price. And now, of course, we know that in this area here since 2003, we have seen an opiate use skyrocket in the United States and opiate drug addiction increase as a result of that. So how is this supported to the dollar? Well, the dollar is managed by the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve supports policies. And what is this thing? Oh, it's a 10-minute limit. So I am going to have to script all this stuff out.